Greetings. About 10 years ago, the international cryptography community, as well as NIST, began working on the end of the shelf life of all the classical encryption that we use. You can remove the remote quantum and it doesn't change anything. Most of the modern crypto will be broken fundamentally before the end of the decade, with or without quantum computers, and including elliptic curves. And that's evidenced by the fact that on September 7th, the NSA updated their approved crypto list and removed every elliptic curve and shortened the list dramatically. And that is also backed by the White House, who signed 2 memorandum in the last 9 months requiring Department of Defense to review all of their cryptography standards because they're mostly fundamentally broken. What does that mean? It means that rather than doing a one-off attack or looking at some problem with how the software was implemented to break into a system, they'll just be able to quickly spin a computer up and decrypt it or duplicate a key of the elliptic curve and get inside, or they will quickly factor a large integer and break RSA 4000. There's always a smart person who says that's not possible, but these kind of innovations then don't come from the person who says it's not possible. They come from the hungry, right? And there seems to be a consensus that most of the modern classical cryptography on a risk tier, let's say low risk, broken by 2025, medium risk by 2027, and it's finished by 2030. And one of the big challenges for the United States government and the international community is transitioning to new cryptography. And so what they're calling it post-quantum cryptography. And the idea is that there are no possible mathematical attacks that anyone has conceived so far that a quantum computer in the future would give us an advantage to decrypting, to a lattice-based post-quantum cryptography. And so as a company, what we do is help people vet snake oil. So if it's not in the left and right limits of NIST, it's snake oil. If it's a hybrid approach with an elliptic curve, it's snake oil. Just it has to be pure lattice-based post-quantum cryptography for the digital signature and the key exchange. And so what we as a company did is we have the first carrier-grade implementation, and our stuff was also used in Ukraine during the conflict. So we have what they call line rate post-quantum cryptography. So with or without encryption, it's the same throughput. And so we have achieved a major feat in the transition to new cryptography.
Kevin, I ask the same thing for you.
Yes.
Can you tell us more how is your organization fusing cyber safely?
We don't open emails from people we don't know.
How do you know if the email comes from the people you
joking.
do know?
Yeah. Or text messages that have no information in them, because that might be an exploit. Yeah. We focus as a company on one of the biggest challenges ahead is the recorded data problem. So a lot of adversarial networks who are up to no good record all the network traffic over their country. So even if you never go to that country, they probably have your private recorded information. So say, for example, we used to operate a consumer VPN. And if you connect to like a server in the United Kingdom, and let's say you're using Amazon, it'll travel over like India or China, the network, because Amazon has really poor routing. And so as a result of that, let's say you're connecting to your Dropbox with private information and photos from your family. They're probably recorded over another country's network, even though you never did anything there and you never connected to a server there. And this is a major problem because what they're doing is harvesting all the historical data, both for the cognitive warfare domain, so that they can better tailor, curate society and target stuff to divide. The other thing they're collecting is information for blackmail and other stuff. So if you have executives and senior scientists and stuff, and maybe they engage in behavior that's, will get them fired. Well, people will approach them with this decrypted information that they thought was safe before the end of the decade, and they're building a massive graph and list of people to go after. So what we try to do is prevent that recorded data problem. So when people say quantum computers aren't here, but the problem is the data now is being recorded in the future to come back and use that recorded data. So the first to be hit will be the cloud services, right? Because that's the central point where you have like Dropbox and SoundCloud and all your apps on there. So they do one hit and they grab everything. And maybe like rather than the Equifax hack, which dumped 145 million records on the internet, you would see the same hack every week at the same company. Because the difference is right now with crypto, when there's a problem, you can make a patch, right? But when we talk about decrypting it, like factoring RSA, large integers to just break it fundamentally, right? There is no patch, there is no fix, there's nothing you can do, you have to shut the company down. Because rather than the current style of hacks where they'll do one at a company, they would just do it every day until the company is bankrupt. And so warfare then will go to companies. It's much easier just to get rid of your company completely So like right now, if you want to ruin the credibility of a cybersecurity company, you hack it, right, and dump it on the internet. What if you could hack it every day? And you don't have to do 6 months of planning. You just record, decrypt, dump, record, decrypt, dump. And so we try to prevent this problem by making the transition to post-quantum encryption seamless and costless in terms of latency and throughput and performance. And we pretty much have achieved that. Actually, that press release is going out this week.
I wish I had a great answer because, Kevin can highlight it a heck of a lot better than I can, exactly all the different attack vectors that some of our adversaries are going to be able to employ. And they're going to do so very effectively, especially when they have more points of contact and apertures by which they can deliver those effects. And it's going to continue to be a challenge. And really the only thing that individual programs can do is do the best that they absolutely can to maintain the security of their build processes and to evolve as the threat evolves. I wish I had a good answer.
I'll switch to Kevin. Kevin, do we have a use case or understanding, how long would it take to implement post-quantum crypto for protection for critical networks or, additional vectors John was mentioning?
It's a huge international effort, and within the United States, they're definitely behind the curve. So Europe has invested in post-quantum encryption way before the United States. But we're catching up, and we have a couple of companies addressing it. And what I want to say is that we're talking about redoing the infrastructure of the entire internet. So really it's about attacking, the internet's broken into a lot of different layers, and it's about finding that and finding your product and targeting it. I don't want to say how you're going to post-quantum encrypt the internet, because that's kind of like saying, when I have just a wheelbarrow, how do I win an F1 race? It's just a huge endeavor. For everything from the transport layer to product layer to at rest to the backbone of the internet and optical encryption, it goes on forever. Hardware encryption is $1 trillion market itself. So one of the cool things about this space is that even if there are competitors, it doesn't really matter because it's just such a big market. For us, we modeled it. It's like 1 trillion by 2027, 2030, because everything has to be redone. And some post-quantum encryption companies will integrate with other security companies, partner with them. So we have commercial agreements where we upgrade your products. And handling cryptography is like handling enriched uranium. The worst thing that can happen is assign a new senior engineer from a top tech firm who's never touched cryptography before, maybe for ego or for promotion, and say, I can do it. I promise you can't. And so getting that implementation right is extremely important.
Kevin.
Yeah, there's a really important thing to get about the current state of the world. It's not just about security and encryption. What we have to understand is that we're not in peacetime, let's be honest. And we won't be in peacetime for at least 20 more years in the future. So the next 20 years are going to be cyber war, conflict. Ukraine is the norm, it's not the outlier. We're reverting back to the norm. What I want to get at is a lot of the reason I suspect that we've been slow to address these risks is under the illusion that economic interconnectedness will encourage people to not carry out attacks. That's nonsense. It's just, there is no historical evidence that that works. In World War II, who was Germany's largest trading partner? It was France. Economic interconnectedness stops nothing, right? So once we accept that and we realize we are in a constant state of war or preparing for it, and that there is no post-war world coming, the internet, digital connection, is actually making it worse. So we have to see reality, and that is that things are getting worse, swallow it, suck it up, and say, I want to get in the fight. I can't just imagine it away or come up with a paper and publish it in foreign policy that it's a post-war world. Because you're not changing the reality because you wrote something smart. And once we see that reality, and we're starting to wake up to it, we have no choice but to get in that fight and realize that economic interconnectedness is not going to stop anything. And there are more wars coming.